Welcome to the Everyday Awesome Project, where we bring you inspirational stories and game changing strategies to live your most awesome life. Well, hey, superstars, welcome back. Polly here.
Sam Pruitt in the house. What's up, lady?
Let's go. So, today, your triggers know something you don't. It's time to listen. Tune in, people, right?
Triggers? Triggers? I don't know what you're talking about.
Okay, so just so you know, we always have a little pre-episode. So Sam and I were just talking, and we're like, kind of heavy topic, right? Kind of let's bring some levity to this. So it's like we're gonna be, bringing some joy in the background of a heavy thing, right?
Yeah, and then we were also saying that we literally get triggered nonstop. It's just a not listen, we're human just like everybody else,
Oh
and
yeah.
everybody who is listening has triggers.
Hmm.
Okay. And so we're just here today to talk about it openly. We'll share our experiences recently that brought this topic to the forefront for today's conversation. And
Yeah.
then obviously give some tools and tricks on how to navigate it, but just how to understand what's going on in your physical body and your emotional body.
Yeah, yeah, because I think it's still a mystery to a lot of people, especially I think you and I take it for granted all that we know because we've learned and we've lived, and me as a hypnotherapist and coach, and all this stuff that we work with people on so much. It's like, oh, doesn't everybody know this? And then we get it happens to us, So we'll go into
Hmm.
that. So let's talk about like what is a trigger. Let's help to start to define that and just set the stage, if you will. So do you have
Well,
a,
you probably want to read the definition or not,
okay.
because I know you'd love to do that. And then I'll get into my 2 cents.
I did have the definition. Oh, what did I do with it?
That's okay.
It was something that initiates something. Oh, shoot. Talk for a second. Let me find it. I'm sorry. I lost it.
Yeah,
Hang on.
yeah. I mean, it is a
An event.
thought, an event, an action, a circumstance, right? An experience that
Mm-hmm.
happens to said person,
Hmm.
the human,
Hmm.
that causes
Mm. Well,
physiologically and then
no,
psychologically. Go
actually,
ahead.
that's not it. So it sets off a chain reaction.
Oh,
So it's not,
sets off. Yeah,
yeah, it's
yeah.
not the
Got the word
cause. It's
cause.
like, yeah, the cause is in within us, so it lives inside of us, the cause of the trigger. But it's like an event, action, or device that sets off a chain reaction or initiates a specific process.
Initiates. That's good.
Initiates, yeah, exactly. And then so what we often think about as a trigger is our response to that event, right? So like we
Like
think,
that person caused or that thing caused. Right, right, right. Okay, so we want to
mhm.
re-terminology and re-explain that. Yes, please. Let's get into
Yes,
that.
yes, stay back in our power, So yeah,
Mhm.
so that's just the generic definition, if you will. So
But it does generally, well, not generally, it always sets off a chain of events. But what I love about your description there, and you have a little bit more to it, is about how the physiological response in the body and in the brain, so biochemistry, that response is faster,
well, yeah,
instantaneous almost, to the rational thought,
yeah, we'll
and
get into
how
the
it basically
science.
leaves the train, it leaves the train station. Okay, the train is out of the before you even realize what the hell's happening. I didn't
Yeah,
get
it's
my
like a
train.
match. Yeah. So I want to say a little bit more. We'll talk a little bit of background. And so we have a couple of angles that will come at this because you've read a lot, I've read a lot, we've studied a lot of different things. So we just want to like soak you in a lot of information from a different perspectives that will already bring up things that you're experienced, aware of, know, maybe didn't know, right? So I have another definition. This one's from AI, is an emotional reaction that feels disproportionate to what just happened because it is, right? And so it's not about the moment you're in, it's the nervous system firing based on a much older moment. And we'll go into that, right? So the present moment is just like a fuse. And, something I think is important is like the distinction, I think, of what creates, let's call it a trigger, because there's things that are happening to us all day long. The window slams or the person next door honks at you or whatever. And same two people, you on a different day, like nothing, totally rolls off of you,
Yes,
right? But we're
yes.
we're we're honing in on the things that trigger you in a way that feels, like you said, disproportionate to the moment. Like, whoa, why did I react to that? So so
Hmm.
we got that set the stage. Do we want to introduce the stories now so you can share your story and where this is, what kind of
Mine's
topic?
maybe a little bit heavier than yours. So why don't you go
Yeah.
with your
Okay.
story first?
Okay. All right. Mine's,
Mine's a bit gritty.
yeah, 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 which is good because so what happened. So I was in Seattle. We were talking on the phone. You're like, oh, this just happened. And, at the end of what you shared about your story, I was like, wow, I have been in that, like we were talking about how like we could relate to it in each other. And so for me, I was traveling. So I normally, when I travel, I'm just like, because I love to travel, right? Totally enjoy it. Like I look at the whole airport experience because I've been in so many. So, it's not a upsetting thing for me. A lot of people like they get, airport like they haven't even left their house and they're already,
Anxiety.
hyperventilating. Yeah. And like the anxiousness of like security, things that they're not used to, right? Where my brain's like, done this enough, know the scenarios, whatever. And I leave in plenty of time, all those things. So, but yesterday there was or there was two moments in the last couple of days. One leaving, going towards Seattle, and one coming back with some not airport security, people at the gate, whatever. So I had a carry-on, and then I had like a little suitcase, and then I had like my bag, my briefcase bag, and then I had a. Trader Joe's cooler bag type thing, which was my food. I had some snacks for the plane and stuff like that because it was like this big long journey I was on. And I get to the gate. I think I'm the last person getting on the plane. Actually, I think I wasn't both times because I like to get on last because I don't like to sit on the plane for very long. So I get on, or I'm like trying to get on, and she's like, "Oh, you have too many bags, and you have to have only two is the maximum." And I was like, "Oh," she's like, "Can that be combined?" Those two, like the little carry-on ones that I had, the smaller bag, the Trader Joe's, whatnot. And I was like, well, like, I mean, I could like shove all this stuff into my suitcase bag, but my computer's there and, it's food and whatnot, blueberries and all sorts of stuff. So I started to do that and, I'm like pulling it out and I'm annoyed. So like that's my trigger is like, you and I were talking about like, where does this come from? But anyway, so like in the moment, I'm like frustrated. I'm like, "Ugh, I just want to get on
Uh,
the plane. I'm like, just let me get on the plane. I'm gonna put it back in this bag after I leave you, like whatever person, right?
it
So I
was a
start,
WTF moment.
yeah, it's just like, really? Like, it's just, and so as I'm like annoyed, and so I'm looking at them like smoke's coming on my ear. Not that bad, but I was just like,
Yeah.
why are you making
Tweaked.
me
You
do
were
this?
tweaked.
So I start putting my food out, and then she's like, oh, hold up. Oh, I didn't know it was food. You can have it in a bag. And I was like, oh, and then I'm more annoyed, right? And then I'm like, you're just, I feel like, oh, why did you just do this to me? So like more annoyance, right? So anyway, I go down the gangplank and I was pretty washed of it by the time I got on the plane. A little bit of like little sparks, but it was gone, right? And coming back, similarly, they're rushing us because the plane is late, and so they're wanting us to get on the plane as fast as possible. And I'm like in line, I'm the last person, and they're like, "Oh, your boarding pass isn't working," this and that, and so there's all of a sudden there's this little bit of commotion because I have to rerun my boarding pass and get on fast, and oh, you have another bag, and I was like, "Oh, well, they told me it was okay," and no, 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 you got to like combine things, and I had an apple and a bottle of water in that second bag, right? So again, annoyed.
Mhm.
Annoyed, triggered frustration, triggered my I want to do what I want to do, don't tell me what to do, all that those little right? And so I start putting the apple in the water. And then I like crumpled up the bag and I'm just like, okay, fine, and I walk 10 feet on the gangplank or whatever. And there's a line. There's like 30 people outside of the
They're all
plane. Like,
pushing and rushing and
and
yeah.
yeah, they're like, you gotta go, you gotta go. And I was like, ah, then I'm more annoyed. Right. So I stop, and the gal in front of me saw the whole thing going on, and she was like frustrated for me, or, like felt for me kind of thing. And I was just like, whatever. So I take my bag out and I'm starting to put the water and the apple in the bag. The gate attendant comes, sees me doing this from like 15 feet down the gangplank, and he's like, come with me. We're going to reassign you, or we're going to rebook you or something on a later flight. Like, it's going to penalize me. And I was like, so then drama, like whatever you want to call it, helplessness shows up, and annoyed and defensive. I was like, I'm getting on this freaking plane. I'm already going to be home at like 1 o'clock in the morning. If I catch this flight, the hell you're going to reassign me. And I was like, it's just water and an apple, and anyway, so that all got worked out, but it's still all that energy, all that frustration, all that annoyance and stuff like that and so as you and I were saying, so what happens later for those of us that are self-aware is we get annoyed that we're annoyed, right?
Right.
Yeah. So,
Exactly.
so this
Exactly.
like spiritual, Buddha in me is like, why did I just get so annoyed? Why did I just get so triggered and stuff? Why, and so I spent all this energy trying to look inside it. But so that's my story. Do you want to share yours now
Well,
or
using that story, let's just
yeah.
unpack it a little bit for the
Yeah.
listeners. So, really, what we're saying in terms of this triggering is it wasn't about the persons who were, critiquing your food choices or questioning why you had food or whatever. Like, it wasn't about, they were just trying to do their job, right? They have
100%.
certain rules, they're following the rules. Some people can be a little overzealous with rule, following or whatever, but it doesn't matter. That's just who they are in the world, and that's what they need to do. It's their job,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
Um,
Safety first.
yes, exactly. But the triggering element is how somebody trying to do that with you in those circumstances and how it was done and how it was communicated and whatever caused a different reaction in you. And so, what we want to say to the listener to kind of be thinking about for themselves in that scenario or different circumstances, is what about that moment caused a reaction or a bigger reaction than need be, for
Hmm.
example, right?
Hmm.
Because it wasn't a your life was in danger over this water and apple or whatever. We were laughing with each other about how we might have done it differently or whatever, because it's you can do all kinds of hilarious things in those moments.
Hmm.
But
Hmm.
how can you keep yourself calm, cool, and collected so you don't get triggered in those circumstances? Really, that's the biggest challenge for all of us humans, isn't it?
Mm.
Because we all have old stories, we all have old scars. And I really liked that one description about the map, like almost
We'll
a
come back to
map of,
that. Yeah. Yeah.
yeah, and how it wasn't about this
Yeah.
bag
Yeah.
full of a water and an apple at all.
Yeah. So two things I would say to your point. One is because I love what you just said because it made me more aware of something that I have studied in the past. So in that moment, I was present to the beliefs, the expectations, the story I had myself that I should be able to get on this damn plane with a bag of fruit. Like to hell. Well, there was the rebellion, to hell with your two bag fucking minimum. Like
Yep.
really, like I'm not,
It's a
like
stupid rule. I refuse it. Yes.
right. So there's that was like what was triggered was the don't tell me what to do. Your
Mhm.
rule is stupid. Like I like getting away with stuff that not other people can get away with, whatever they're all those little mini beliefs and stuff. And I also noticed like I wasn't in like my Zen place. Like I don't know why necessarily. Like on a different day, if that had happened, I'm trying to think if that's happened to me before. I don't remember this specifically, like the two bag minimum thing, type of thing, because I often don't carry on anything. Like I usually like check everything and I just have like one carry on, if you will. So this was a new experience for me. So but my other thought was you said, how could, how is knowing that scenarios of all flavors and sorts show up in either places that you don't know, right? So like being just curious and open, like, wow, I'm now traveling with a carry-on. I don't usually travel with a carry-on. I wonder if there's things that I'm going to bump into that I'm not familiar with,
Mm.
So like I could have just been in a space of curiosity. I could have prepared myself in a space of curiosity or lightness or kindness. So, whether that's a meditational intention, like how you go into a space and stuff. But I was carrying the intention of like, I'm getting on that plane and I'm carrying my bags and I need this food with me and blah, 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 all these things, trying to get away with something that in their world was outside of what they allow.
So you went into that circumstance without full capacity
Mm,
for expecting the unexpected,
true.
having the curiosity, etc. So that's a capacity issue, right? Like we can go into any circumstances. Hell, we get out of bed. Do we have capacity for the day? You know
Phone
what I mean?
rings, first text of the day. Oh, geez. Totally.
Totally, dude.
Yeah.
And it's because every day at any given moment, we have a different capacity for life. That's just how I perceive it. And it,
Mhm.
it ebbs and flows based on so many things. It can be, did I get a good night's sleep? Am I hungry? Am I tired? Am I lonely? It can be those things. And it can just be a general like load on the human is how I normally see it show up, either for myself or with people that I'm working with. Is like, okay, yo, you just got way too much load. Like,
Yeah.
yeah, sure, you have the capacity of a freaking freight train or a garbage truck or whatever, but it doesn't mean that it should be full and things should be overflowing, right?
Hmm.
Then there is no capacity for what could go wrong or right,
Hmm.
what could be different, what could
Hmm.
be a curiosity or a new adventure or a new learning or whatever. You just don't simply have the capacity or the bandwidth,
Hmm.
you know?
Hmm. Yeah. So
You're
it could
already
be a
riding
one
the
time.
line. You're riding the line.
It could be like a one time or just a whole, I would call,
Way
I
of
was
living.
like, yeah, I was going to say like an intention or an attitude, so one of the things that morning meditation, and it's funny, some of the things you were talking about, I know we want to go into the science a little bit later, so I'm not going to go too much into that, but I was sleep deprived, like I had a 3:30 a.m., first flight and then this
Ouch.
all, things like that. And this was like almost, well, it was 8 p.m., the second flight or whatnot. But, I'd had a long day of like meeting and blah, 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 whatever.
Yeah.
So there was,
Yeah.
some factors. So I think capacity is one thing, meaning like how much do you have on your plate? And we can talk from a neuroscience perspective. I can share about from the hypnotherapy, like what your brain has capacity for and then just gets overloaded by. You're more easily susceptible and overloaded when you haven't had full 3 rounds of REM sleep. We'll talk about it. Anyway, okay. So
And I
let's,
would say, yeah, sleep and food are biggies that people
yeah.
completely ignore. Back to the nervous system.
Hmm.
So do we want to touch bases on that before I give
I
my
know
story?
we
Like
we were
that
sort of
nervous
like
system.
we're unpacking this in a totally different way. We're like, oh my God, we gotta like throw this in now. Like this is
Because we're
important.
triggered. We just have to do
Must say this now.
it. This is
Gotta get
this
this
is
out.
part of the episode.
We're emotionally, empowered, like triggered to like express. Like here, you need to hear this now. So
Well, so okay, so I had a situation and I was texting with you this morning, like I'm still, it was a couple days ago now, whenever
yeah,
it was,
yeah,
and
carryover.
I'm still carrying around the nervous system charge. So I'm
Hmm.
not like ruminating about it or really consciously thinking about it, but there's an undercurrent in my nervous system that's carrying that energy
Yeah,
into other places and experiences and conversations and relationships that I'm having. So it's like this energy vortex almost that I kind of dropped into with
yeah,
my experience of
yeah.
being triggered. And then now I'm trying to flush through it, like flush the toilet is kind of this is what I'm getting.
Mhm.
But that energetic swirly bob moment. How would you describe that?
Well, I want to talk, first I'd love for you to share. Let's put the story in now, just so people can relate to the story that you want to share about, and then we'll talk about, like the how it occurred for you and how the last couple of days have been and what some of that is. So share the
Yeah.
however much of the
I
moment.
will excuse me, I will share it tactfully because I don't want to get too
Yeah.
nitty gritty about it. But basically, I'm out in the world all the time, as you know, and most people will know who know me. And I'm always meeting people, like literally meeting strangers, talking to strangers all of the time. I have a big, expansive world like that, whether it is in person or online or whatever. I'm very, very comfortable with that. Like, have no stuff around that. However, that was violated in a way, and that's what triggered me with a
Or
connection.
you allowed yourself to be triggered by this experience. Yeah. Yeah.
Right, exactly. So I met a male human being, in a environment that was very safe and comfortable or whatever. We made a connection, talking about running, talking about ultra running specifically, all the things that I love. It was a very natural experience. And then that person came back into my space. I met them again. We talked again, and basically it was all about ultra running and running because they were getting ready to do that. And I am passionate as hell about it. Anybody who knows me knows that. So great connection, good conversation, fun. They had asked for my phone number to be able to get more tips, advice, or whatever. Well, I'm a coach. This is literally what I do for a living. Very comfortable with that also. No qualms, happy to do it. Let's talk it through. And there was an injury. So basically, we were kind of talking through the injury and how to get through the race, survive the race, if you will, with this injury. And it was fun and light and all the things. But a couple days later, basically that person reached back out to me, started a texting conversation, which seemed benign enough initially. And so we were talking about the injury and other things. But very quickly, that conversation went south and became a sexually charged, inappropriate conversation. And I had to shut it down, which I did. And I was crystal clear about how I was communicating the inappropriateness, etc. But it did 1,000% trigger me. 1,000%. Not that I felt unsafe or that whatever. I mean, I definitely did feel disrespected. 100%. Yes, I did. But that was hugely triggering for me. And so basically, I stepped back. Well, I shut it down, of course. And then I stepped back and was giving thought to, wow, this is really bringing up some shit
And
relevant
so
to
what
this
was your
young woman.
emotions? What was the state that you felt? Give us like two or three of the emotions that were showed up.
Mostly pissed off,
Pissed off,
angry, yeah,
anger.
and then disrespected for sure. Those were like my two hot buttons, if you will. And
Mhm.
then I will say there was an underlying post when I thought about it, post event, post conversation, or whatever, of lack of safety or need to make myself feel safe quickly, right? Like my instinctual primal self
Yeah.
did go there very quickly too, right? Like, hey, is there a safety breach here? Do I need to, I need to check this, that kind of thing. So those
Yeah.
three things happen in a very rapid
Yeah.
succession.
Just like whoosh, like wash over you.
Boom,
Got it.
boom, boom. Yeah,
Yeah, yeah,
exactly.
yeah. So when you were talking about like, so that was maybe Tuesday, I think, Monday or Tuesday that happened. And this is Thursday that we're recording this. And so a couple days have happened. And like you said, there's still stuff in your energetic body or whatnot. So let's
Yeah.
start to unpack, there's different stories, theories, people out there who have studied this from a lot of different angles. So maybe we start to introduce some of those people, like one of your favorite people, Dr. Gabor Mate. I think we can talk about his
Wow.
work. Yeah, yeah,
Okay.
yeah.
I want to
So,
just close down that story real
oh,
quick.
okay, sorry.
Basically, the next day, the other person apologized, and I had given great thought to how I felt about what had transpired,
Yeah,
and I very crystal clearly delivered a concise message, offering some compassion to the breach of the human, but not forgiving in any way or excusing in any way, absolutely calling it like what it was, speaking my truth and standing tall and strong in my own self and wisdom. But just so people know, like that, I just handled that moment. However, that person responds and takes it,
boundary.
not
Yeah,
my problem. Yeah.
boundary. Yeah,
But it really did liberate me. I felt totally liberated from that particular experience, like you with the plane. By the time you had sat down and calmed yourself and whatever, it moved on. It washed off. It washed off. But there is this little bit of residual energy for me, not related to that humor, that story, but that trigger still has an energy or a spark to it that's floating around. And I'm kind of bumping into it a little bit and trying to navigate that now.
yeah. Well, I think I want to point out when you and I had a call the day after this happened, the morning after, and you hadn't checked your phone to see, you hadn't communicated back the boundary, you hadn't seen anything from him about apology and stuff like that. So that where you and I stood when we were having that conversation was, just present to the experience that you're having, like the unsafe, the pissed off, and we we went a little bit, we blew this up to like women shouldn't have to,
Well, because it did open a
right.
doorway of
Yeah.
awareness, which I have great appreciation for, by the way. And of course, as
Yes.
I say, this is all the curriculum, right? This is
Exactly. And that's what
literally
we were talking
just the
about.
curriculum.
So
Is
I wanted to I wanted you to introduce about like Earth School and how we look at it. So like that's what
totally.
you and I immediately go into. Oh, here's today's curriculum.
Yeah,
Like
and we had a good sense of humor. Yeah, sure, we were pissed off and ranting a little bit, but we were also laughing our asses off. It's like, this is how it fucking shows up, dude. This is the curriculum.
exactly, exactly. So what you say? What you mean by that? Just like what does that mean to you and me? What is curriculum?
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
Earth
What?
School
Yeah.
curriculum.
Well, we're all humans in this earth school. We're all here for a reason, which is to continue to evolve ourselves, ideally. And in that, I mean getting to know thyself, understand thyself. So then you can understand your place in the world and how you're connected to all living things and this planet and all of that stuff. I mean, to me, that's all part of the curriculum. But these things that happen, and sometimes they do look like triggers, are very informational,
Mm.
little bits of schooling, if you will, around like, wow, holy shit, what just happened and how did that show up for me? Why is that a thing? right?
Yeah.
Or why are any of these circumstances, major or minor, whether it's getting on a plane with a food bag or having something a little more extreme, like my situation's pretty dicey, right? Why did they fire us off? And you and I quickly were able to talk through and unpack together like our own experiences of being women in the world and being seen in a certain way and being, navigated with other species or the opposite sex in a certain way, and what our experience maybe was when we were younger and growing up and becoming a woman and all of that stuff. I mean, there's a lot of weight to these things. In some instances, they're pretty major things for us to have connection to as an integrated piece or a wound or a map within our physical body, our somatic body, connected to the emotional trigger or the experience response.
Yeah, and I think one thing we want to point to, and maybe I'll read a little bit about Dr. Gabor Mate, but you and I both were able to recognize because we've done a lot of this work and we've been in school, it continues, maybe this is just another summer school or something like that, right? But we recognize, oh, this is because of something else, right? And I just want to read something from about Dr. Gabor Mate's work because this ties it together. So, his distinction is trauma is not what happened to you, it's what happened inside you as a result, right? The same event can shatter one person and roll off another. So somebody could be like bumping around, not necessarily this one, but like the original event is so depending on the internal landscape at that time. So let's introduce something that we've talked about in other episodes, but in case you haven't heard those. So he identifies two types of trauma, and you may have heard this because it's becoming more socially like aware. There's a big T trauma, the capital T trauma, abuse, assault, loss of your parent, violence, something, let's call it major happens to you. And then what he was beautiful about introducing is there's lots of small t trauma, right? Lowercase t trauma. So it could look like unmet needs as a child. It could look like emotional dismissal. It could look like chronic disapproval, like never measuring up, or just not being seen. Like parents weren't there. Let's us latchkey kids, right? So
Not having a need met, period.
yes,
And we all
yes.
have needs.
Yeah. And so what he leans on is saying that the small chi traumas are responsible for most of the triggers that we're all walking around with. I mean, yeah, some people have got the big T's and,
Yeah.
and they probably, work to protect those and evolve those, if you will. But a lot of us are just walking around from varying degrees of loving families and have small T's show up, and one of the things I wanted to tack on to something you said about Earth School being the curriculum, and it's like we're here to, evolve. I've been studying a lot of Ram Dass lately, and you've been studying a lot of Buddhism and stuff. And I don't know that I know the answer to this. One of my favorite authors, and we'll talk a little bit about his work, Michael Singer.
Yeah.
They all sort of point to the idea of either the human being at peace. So anything that takes us out of peace or well-being or groundedness or centeredness, that's the path to enlightenment. Is like none of this bothers us, and at the end of life, right? You would see that those people who are at the end of life don't have these same triggers. They're just in a space of pure oneness and pure like equanimity and you're me and I'm you, right? Like, so the things that our stories and our mental mind make up. So, but a lot of this, the foundation of these things is because we're not totally free. We are human beings and we have this 2 million year old brain and how it works, right? And it
Right.
stores things, right? So in Dr. Mate's work, he says it fires abandonment circuits. That's what he calls them. They're brain patterns formed when we're little. We all say it's all from our childhood when we felt unsafe or unseen, examples, and we suddenly reactivated by something in the present, right? So as we're little, we were either ignored, we weren't seen, we were dismissed, we were, told we're not good enough, whatever, or we interpreted we were not good enough by the way our parents reacted or, treated us. And in the moment today, as adults, that's still inside of us. You said, is it kind of swimming inside of us? And we're going to talk about a couple of different theories and look at this. So he's saying, that's in your body somewhere, right? And we'll talk about like the body keeps the score and it's somatic. And maybe we'll go into like we'll go into how to work with these things. I'll introduce one of my favorite books was The Untethered Soul, Michael Singer. And his language for what Dr. Gabor Mate is talking about is he calls them samskaras, which are like thorns in the body, right? So he has this way of talking like thoughts are just constant, they're like air bubbles or like little bubbles floating through life, right? And so
Like in a
like
cartoon.
in a cartoon, right? So like a bubble floats in, you hear something, you see something, you experience something, and it's like, and just let it float on like a cloud passing through the sky, right? So I remember this one that I heard recently is like, you are the sky, and thoughts or things that happen to you are like clouds passing over it. But we think that those clouds are real. It's like, no, you're the sky. You're the thing that these thoughts, these experiences happen within, like who you really are, our identity. We take on, why this triggers us, why we get upset, and then we get justifying, or me, I'm like righteous, like I should be able to take two bags on. It's right. Like we get a stance, instead of being like, I'm the sky and you're just doing your job. Like, okay, no worries, right? But
I
we,
have the way I interpret how these things become so hot,
yeah,
you know,
yeah.
and take on a life of their own, literally, energetically, or
Take
like,
us over.
bam. Yeah. Is that the human, whether it's me or whatever, their sense of belonging is
Mm,
threatened. It's
mm,
literally their sense of belonging is threatened. It is a safety and security threat
good point.
to the human called you.
Yeah.
And it doesn't seem like it would be, especially carrying water and an apple on board. But actually, yes,
Yeah.
it is or
Mm,
can be perceived as a threat to that sense of belonging,
mm,
and to me, that's at the root of it, whether there's trauma associated to it or not, and
mm,
however people perceive trauma in their life and how to be able to work with it and navigate with it. I know we're going to get into, but if you don't have actual like emotional fitness or spiritual audacity or whatever the things are that you and I have, okay,
mhm,
because we do have both spiritual audacity, which is a whole fun thing to talk about on another
mhm,
podcast,
mhm,
and emotional fitness.
mhm,
Navigating these things when they arrive is
mm,
very difficult, because there is that physiological reaction before the psychological reaction. Like when I experienced my thing, my body just reacted before my brain was even really processing what was occurring, before my intellect could get involved and
mhm.
rationalize or not rationalize, right? My body was like, whoa, there's a fire in the building. What the fuck? Right?
Yeah, yeah. So let's go into the science behind this. So there is an amazing little video that I saw. This was probably like 10 years ago, and I've shared it many, many times in classrooms that I've led when people, just to help them understand, what goes on behind this eyeball and these ears and, like the interpretation, right? Like you hear something, right? And how is it filtered through the brain, in the brain? It's not just like, oh, because we know, two people see the same car accident, different response, whatever.
Totally different.
Two people grow up in the same household, turn out
Totally different.
differently in life. Two
Mhm.
people look at, somebody says something, they go, "So what?" And you go, "What? You don't think that that's horrible?" Like, you know, it's all what's between the ears and how it's
Totally.
being. So science wise, when you talked about, like this fire and like you're just fueled up, right? So a word for that they talk about called I call it emotionally hijacked, but it's another phrase is amygdala hijack, right? Because it's hormones, it's chemical, it's the chemical factory that's like,
Oh, yeah.
hold up. So that like the amount of like timing of this thing. So like the thing comes the waves come in through your ear, it's interpreted. Thought happens in the brain that interprets the sound, those wavelengths, if you will, translates that through the lens of your life experience. Like it goes through the brain and goes, is that, fight or flight? Like, what is this? Is this something we should be scared of? Right?
Mhm.
Gives you a response, goes to the amygdala, sends out chemicals, 12 milliseconds.
12 milliseconds.
Yeah.
That is craziness right there.
Yeah. So before the thinking brain is even online, like you did, that's why it's
And
called
the reason
hijacking.
it's 12 milliseconds is because the human had to survive. It's
Yeah.
so primal. There was not time to fuck around and give thought or
Go.
analyze circumstances. Y'all best run now. Okay. And then later, when we're done being chased by the lion, we can sit in the savannah under the tree and like contemplate
or
what you're going to do.
strategize, how the hell do I get out of here? That's
That's
what
right.
starts to happen. It's like, oh, and so when in that moment when they're trying to rebook me on a flight and I go into, oh, hell you are,
Exactly.
I'm like, no, like my safety is threatened or whatever you want to call it. Like, I
Totally.
gotta get home and you're gonna take me from getting home. And so, and I don't have access to the, oh, no, 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 it's just an apple, like the, we're going to get upset and I'm going to get rebooked by an apple. You really want that on social media? Like,
Right, exactly.
right. That's not where I was, right? Because 12
That's a
milliseconds
great
happened.
airline commercial.
Rebooked me because I was carrying an apple in a bag.
Oh
Wow.
my
Anyway,
goodness.
so you can't think yourself out in real time. That's why, especially in relationships, when something comes in through
Talk
the
about
ears
triggering.
and we interpret it in a way that person made me angry. That person upset me. No, 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 no.
Disrespected me. This person disrespected me. It's like,
Yeah.
I don't know about that. Did they
Yeah.
know?
Exactly. All they did, so I was telling you that in my year in TMLP, landmark work, my team management and leadership program, we did a lot of work on this, right? Because it was a communication. It was 1 year about communication. And one of the ways that they would train you or like distill it down is there's just breath and sound waves coming out of their mouth.
Mm,
That's all that's happening in that moment is like air and sound waves are coming out of their mouth.
mm-hmm, mm-hmm,
And if you went, fuck, that's really all that's ever going on.
mm-hmm.
That's all that's ever going on. It's like, like breath and sound waves. And then all this other stuff, and be like, how long have I known this person? And is this a threat? And all this stuff happens inside of us, right? And they call it inside of our listening. I say it's inside of, our paradigm, our perspective, or the stories that were stored in our brain and our body, subconsciously is what it's bouncing up against, you
Yeah,
know?
yeah.
So,
And in our Buddhist world, we would very quickly and closely look at the other, whoever is doing the talking and the mandating or whatever shenanigans they're up to, is like without any attachment to what is coming from the other. Huh. We're going to simply have awareness and observe. It's called a noting practice. Oh, I observe this. I observe that. Okay. So that pause and that air, if you will, that we breathe into the moment, and then without judgment or attachment, just that other person is doing them. Okay, so to the best of their ability, which might be very minimal capabilities, humaning on the other side of this table or whatever, all they're doing them, and that's not about me.
yeah. Yeah. And so a couple of things absolutely, and I just want to throw in here. So we talked about the amygdala hijacking. And so what happens is, the sound wave comes in, gets interpreted by the brain like so fast, right? The emotional flooding. Okay. So the amygdala is, and I think it's hypothalamus
This is
too. For some
going into
reason,
the library where all the nasty stuff is at.
yeah. So basically, what happens is your bloodstream, a chemical factory gets released. We interpret it as a feeling or an emotion, right? So anxiety, adrenaline, all these areas of the body that it hits, right? If you go into fight or flight, we know that like the heart rate goes up, blood goes to the extremities so you can run or you can fight, right? It shuts down
Cortisol
digestion.
floodgates.
So emotional flooding is what happens. And I just want to point out that that initial like thing happened, interpreted by the brain, 12 milliseconds, the flood happens, chemicals get released. You experience it as an emotion, whether it's punch that person in the face or, or like I want to rebel and like get on the plane or whatever we want to do. 90 seconds is all those chemicals are probably going to last in the body, depending on how long that experience was or how long you were even focused on that thing, right? Like if you were like, whatever, and you walked away, like maybe it's 20 seconds, maybe it's 30 seconds, right? Up to 90 seconds. So I would, so in my work with addiction and helping people with, emotional floods around food and addiction triggers and things like that, I would say, if you can sit out that wave, if you can just ride that wave of that flood,
Mm-hmm.
guess what? On the other side of it is like calm water, right? Like we go back to our homeostasis. So, and it's amazing. We don't think it's going to end. When we're in it, we don't think it's going to end because what are we focused on? What are we, we're just like jamming the circuitry, if you will.
Well, let me point out what many of us do. I'm not speaking for myself right
Oh
now,
no. Yes.
but so the 90 seconds. it's processing this experience. And rather than let it pass and freedom and liberation being on the other side, oh no, we pour gasoline on it.
Let
We
me
pour
text somebody about this. Oh, wait, let me tell you what this person just did, or,
we whip out, yeah, we whip out our phone. We start to react. We do all of these things that are basically, oh, put a little more gasoline on that fire. Oh, it looks like it's smoldering. It might go out soon. Nope, not having it. Keep right.
totally,
Totally, totally.
totally.
And
Yeah.
by the way, we can do this for years and
Mm,
our entire lifetime in many
mm.
relationships. Oh my gosh.
Well, we're not going to get into, I mean, we could totally do a whole episode on the addiction to the emotional chemicals, right?
Hmm.
Because that becomes a thing, right?
Yeah.
So if you grew up in a household where chemicals were flying, like I think
Hmm.
my mom grew up in a household where like fear, or whatever, the states that I see her in, it became her adopted norm, right? And your
Yeah.
body will adapt, just like it will adapt to extra weight. It will adapt to an extra. You've seen it. You live in the warm desert, then your body gets cool. It just adapts, right? You are used to eating crappy food or smoking or whatever to keep you alive. It will adapt. Same with emotional regulation. Like you have a different thermostat, and it wants that quote home. So what's for
Hmm.
another episode, but so, yeah, what about that? So, emotional flooding happens and it's a survival state pretending, and you're pretending to have a conversation, but guess what? You're just hijacked. And you're right. You said it lives in the nervous system, right? So,
Oh, yes, it does.
mm,
Oh, yes, it does. It's an energy within the nervous system.
yeah, yeah. So,
And then I was talking to you during that thing, and I was like, I'm gonna go to the gym. I'm gonna lift some weights. We'll crush some things. Ah! And actually, then I finished that conversation with you, and I did feel a good sense of relief and was already kind of working through things. And I was like, oh, you know what? That's actually not what I need right now.
mm,
I didn't go to the gym, even though I was parked in
mm,
the parking lot with my door literally open.
mm,
I closed said door,
mm,
and then I drove to the nearest trailhead and I went
mm,
out into nature for an hour.
mm,
Totally recalibrated. Totally.
mm, mm, mm. So good. So
Mhm.
good. I want to introduce two other bits of, like, let's say the science or different angles that we can take on this. One is there's a great book out there. I know you have another one, but The Body Keeps the Score. We're talking about the somatic. And then I also want to talk about hypnotherapy. Yeah, if you're watching the video of this, Samantha's got the book, but that's a long time, great book, right? So
Unbelievable. This work is
good.
life changing. Okay, what was
Yeah.
the next one? I've got two
Yeah.
more here.
Well, and then hypnotherapy. So, well, that's because the background that I have and whatnot. So, with Peter Levine, who wrote Somatic Experiencing, and I may butcher this name, but Bessel van der Kolk, The Body Keeps the Score, that's the author of that book. They made the same argument that triggers are not stored in the mind, they're stored in the body.
Mm-hmm.
They're not.
And of course, my favorite human in the world right now.
Is that Gabor Mate? Yeah, yeah, yeah. When
Mm-hmm.
the body says no, such a good book, such a good book. So if
Damn.
you want to really dive into, I mean, like depending on how far deep you want to go into this, there's so
Well,
much.
if
And
you want to heal, you might want to get one of these. I mean,
mhm.
just get started, right?
So, they point out that, like animals in the wild, when they're facing life-threatening circumstances, they don't develop this trauma. This is a totally humans experience, right? That we like carry these things. Like I was talking about, Michael Singer says they're like some scars, like these bubbles are just floating by. And in that moment, if that thing wasn't something, like you said, in our curriculum, we're supposed to study, and then we fucking hold on to it for 20, 30, 40 years, whatever our lifetime,
Mm-hmm.
it's like wanting to be released, wanting to be healed. And you and I were saying when you were texting me that morning, you're like, look at this classroom I'm in. Oh my God, I hadn't thought about this, area of the school district for all, school building for a long time. I was like, oh, I guess you're like revisiting that, because one thing we said is like, it wants to be healed. It wants to be released. It wants to be transformed. You don't want to be like walking around with that little thorny, like raw, like somebody touches you with sandpaper and you're like, ow, 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 right? You don't want to be that emotionally hijacked all the time. So heal that.
And the reason animals aren't, of course, is that their cognitive capabilities are completely different than the human. And then additionally, after they were chased by the lion, right, and survived, all animals, they shake. So their nervous system releases that experience, that somatic energy.
Yeah.
And literally, they'll just be in position, shaking, shaking, shaking until it's released from the body, and then it's gone. It doesn't get stored into the memory bank, right? So I have to walk around every day now looking at are you a lion? Are you a lion? Are you a lion? Are you, you know what I
Mm-hmm,
mean?
mm-hmm, mm-hmm. Yeah, if it had
Not
just gone
everybody's a
through.
lion.
Yeah,
Right.
yeah. So I would say that these triggers or these traumas or little T's or whatever that are, I think they are stored in our body because I'll say that my work in hypnotherapy taught, has shown me not only learning about it, but also seeing it with my clients and how the mental, so and there's even work these days that are saying like it's not even up in our brain, like these synapses and things that we think we have. It's like actually like our memories aren't stored in our head. It's not like it's inside of our head. It's out in the universe and we just are a receiver for it. So that's another episode. But I do find that like it gets stored in the body, and you and I think would say like where it's stored is probably like a weakness area, and Ayurvedic would say then that's where disease is going to happen. It's usually no surprise like oh somebody's got ovarian cancer, or so, and that's the work of what's her name with the um, uh, ah the
Well, there's science, there's real science on all this stuff now. I mean, so autoimmune, because I have autoimmune and I could possibly have another one we're exploring now. Like that's absolutely,
what's happening.
absolutely,
Yeah.
yes, on a cellular level,
Yeah.
deep inside my little cells and mitochondria, right?
Hmm.
Over time, some things happened, and eventually my body's chronic response to those circumstances, those experiences, that triggering or trauma or whatever, it eventually has a physical manifestation. I mean, there's science. You and I are not just making this shit up now. I
Yeah,
mean,
it
there's
like fries the endings of the nerve
and
system.
it
So,
changes everything, right? Gut microbiome has changed, pH body balance has changed, cellular health is either eroded or not, inflammation goes up, like all the things. 40% more receptors in
mm,
the stomach and belly of cortisol alone. 40%. Of
yeah,
course, I'm going to have belly fat
yeah,
if I'm
yeah.
stressed out.
So from the work of hypnotherapy, we look at it, like, and neuroscience is like, we often think that they say neurons that fire together wire together, right? So how that looks like in your life is like the one I used to teach my patients and clients about a lot, especially the food ones, is the scenario looks like when you're a child, and I don't know how many birthdays you had that were celebrations and people came over to your house and it was, fun experiences around birthdays, not the ones that went a little,
Oh,
sideways.
hopefully.
Yeah, happy birthdays. And what do they put in front of you when everybody's around and they're singing and all the eyes are and attention are on you? Most likely for most of us growing up, it was a big chocolate birthday cake, right? Or some, whatever. For me, it was anyway. So, all these years of associating friends, laughter, play, good times, center of attention, cake is introduced, right?
Oh, yeah.
So, how do I associate chocolate, cake? It's like a reward, a celebration, right? And I remember
Love and belonging.
love and belong, all like layer all that stuff in, right? So you see cake, you see chocolate, whatever. Just
Mhm.
like, we talk about, you can have this in a lot of sensory areas. You could have it in music. A song reminds you of a place or a person, right? It could be you go and visit some place and all the memories of that, somatic experience, that kinesthetic experience come back to you, right? So it's not sensory dependent. It can come in, but that's what the brain is doing is it's associating, it's linking things up, it's tying things. So if you did it over and over again, right? So, and this can work for you and it can work against you. You can have things that you were repelled by. Like I know, I used to have a black dog and I remember, I was living in the South for a while and how many black people were afraid of my black dog. And I was like,
Mm.
wow. But it was like they associated the black dog with danger or attack or something like that. Where he's the sweetest little dog ever, or not little, but I mean, he's a big, uh, black lab, but black dog to them was like fear, no good. They would walk on the other side of the sidewalk. I'm like, wow,
No.
he's so sweet, right? And we can have those things that are good. Like you and I have a positive association to going to the gym or getting out on a trail or working up a sweat or doing something hard and challenging because we know, the other side where some people are like, hell no, I don't want to. So that's what so that neuroassociative binding, conditioning, linking up. And that's where in hypnotherapy, we break those links, right? So you've linked up something that you don't want to, like if you have an addiction, you've linked up for a lot of my eating clients, eating is pleasure. It relieves stress. It, relieves loneliness. It, whatever, right? So that gets linked up. So you've got to unhook that, right? And so these triggers that we talk about, those mini ones that are good, like, oh, I got to go to the gym. Like you've linked up a good trigger to go to the gym. You're motivated. But when these things in our life happen, they trigger us in a not so good way because it reminds us of something from the past that got linked up. Yeah, dogs,
Well,
no, right?
this is an interesting, this is just my personal evolution, but being in this year to live course and life inventory and all these things that are in process, it's fascinating, by the way. We are revisiting. So this last course, this last weekend was about, in particular, doing the life inventory, and everybody was kind of sharing how they're doing it or what it's bringing up for them
Oh,
or
I want to
whatever.
hear it. Yeah.
And talk about triggering. Dang, girl. Okay. So I was like, wow, this is fascinating to listen to other people's experiences and just how many people have a fear of even going there, even doing it, right? Because there's so much trauma or negative or pain or all these unresolved emotions and ideas around relationships and their life experience, right? And how to change that perspective so that you can open the doorway to that healing. So, just um, for myself, one of the things that I have been doing quite a bit lately, you have awareness to, is examining and revisiting old relationships and old music and old places.
Yeah, you're doing a lot of
So
this.
how I
Yeah.
kind of did my, and everyone was like, well, that's so interesting because how I put mine together was, okay, well, here is all the places I lived over my course of my life. Because by the way, it's very hard to remember some things, especially when you do have big T or little t flying around in your world, right? Your memory does not want to go there. It's going to still continue to try and protect this human being here. So where were all the places that I lived? What were the relationships I had in these different places and times? So that's an evolution of, birth up to adulthood. That's a lot. I lived in a lot of places, by the way. Half of them I was like, what the hell? I totally forgot I even lived there. And then these relationships. And then I put layers of like music and experience on top of that. So it's been a really beautiful collage, if you will, like a retrospective collage. And somebody, by the way, did do a collage, which I also thought was amazing with old pictures. Oh my God, that was phenomenal, like piece of artwork. Absolutely brilliant. And in that, you can do an incredible amount of healing because you go
Feeling.
back
Yeah.
into those places at your own accord, under your own devices, in a safe environment, supported or unsupported, however you want to do it. So for me, like I literally have been visiting some of these places that historically I would have had a lot of negative emotional experience or psychological expression around. And I diffused it, and it's crazy. That's so incredibly empowering. And I'm still doing that work now. And
You
I'm
went to
sure,
those places, or you just like were sitting and like visualizing them or
no,
pictures
I
of them?
physically have gone to many of them.
Oh, okay.
Now, of course,
Cool.
maybe you can't always do that,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
But you can mentally, or with some really good coaching, you can go to those places and do that work. But for me, no, I've been physically visiting some of them, and that has been wild,
So
you know?
good. Wow.
Yeah,
You
it's
know,
been
because
cool.
so in the work of Tony Robbins, he talks about it as we have a reticular activating center, right? So something triggers us and it's always there. Like it always, fires off the same signal. So he's about like interrupting that pattern, right? That's the first thing is like, oh, like interrupting it in that moment so it doesn't fire and wire together. Like it stops the signal and going, chocolate cake, eat it. Chocolate cake, feel good, right? You interrupt it and then you replace it. And this is the work, this is where NLP, neuro linguistic programming, is fucking brilliant, dude. Like,
Mm,
replace. And I also wanted to say, I love that you were talking about that in collages because your subconscious mind is often stored in pictures, right? Not just, it doesn't store words. It's not like this narrative that shit that's up in your brain. It's like snapshots, videos, and they're literally stored as micro moments, like microfiche of like bink, bink, bink of what was happening. And all the emotional stuff, all the sensory stuff is there with it. It's visual, but it's also the sensory comes. That's why you can hear a song, right? Like you see a place, like a whatever place that you enjoyed, and then the song plays in your ear. So the collaging, that's awesome. And that's,
isn't that
and
so
that's where
cool?
talk therapy is not going to interrupt this stuff, right? I
Right,
love,
right.
it just can't interrupt those because it's stored as pictures and videos with sensory stuff. So
Hmm.
it can help you to revisit it. And, like hypnotherapy is great about like putting you back in those scenarios and you can change that. And
to
then,
unpack, and then with the intention, and this does require a great deal of skill, people, to disconnect, like you're saying, to disconnect those things, right?
mhm, mhm, for sure. And the work we were doing in the landmark courses last year, it's all about communication. It's surprising how much it worked on these types of things. So they had a whole process, it's called recreation, which doesn't exactly define it, but we do these exercises where you put yourself back in that space and people can act out the people that were there with you. Like we did this one where it was like, um, if you know, like for example, somebody would have an experience on a playground, right? And there was kids and they dropped the ball or, and the kids started laughing or somebody pushed them down and they cried or whatever, something. And there's a bunch of people around, right? And so that moment creates that experience. You can take them back in that experience but in this adult when they have access to the prefrontal cortex of an adult human, not a young person, you can transmute the story, the experience of it. And NLP is all about that in like micro time, not like it's not like 9 years of therapy. It's like yeah, just some quick vision. It's fascinating. It's so
Mm-hmm.
good, so good.
And you and I are not suggesting or saying that everybody needs to revisit all of their traumas. We're not saying that this is what you need to be doing in order to fully
No,
heal.
don't go walking around trying to dig all this stuff up. Right.
That's very intense, and in some cases, might not be the right path or choice for the human being, right? But
Mhm.
there's so many things that we can undo, unravel, that will give us so much more freedom to
Mhm.
have, again, capacity for emotional fitness, capacity for, awareness, awakening, for all of the things that we just call liberation, freedom.
Yeah, so anything that throws you off that state, let's say of peace or well-being or like all is well, the work of Michael Singer, somebody was asked him in a class one time, just what you were talking about, like, okay, so I got to go like clean up all this, junk in some of scars in me. He's like, oh no, life will just bring them in. Just like me at the airport, like, oh, guess I still have this one there, right? So
Here comes the curriculum.
here's your class is open, class is in session. Here we go, right?
Eyes open, classroom open.
So let's just, leave them with a few things that we can actually do. So,
Yeah.
part of it is like naming it, right? The self-awareness that you talked about. Like for me, it was like, oh
Absolutely.
man, I'm freaking triggered, so I call it emotionally hijacking, whatever, but,
I
label
never
it like,
mind. It's basically look at it with courage. Be
yeah,
aware and look at it with courage.
and don't make yourself wrong. Like,
Oh,
and
hell no.
unless you do some of that deeper work, or maybe there's some really key things that you do want to evolve, you can't walk around just doing this work all the time, right? You can, but like don't go about it and like quit your job and do all this stuff
Yep.
unless
You
you have
don't need
some
to drown in it,
right, right.
right?
But find it in the body first. Where is it? Breathe into it. There's lots of great somatic work that you can do, and then just do something to buy yourself that 90 seconds. I'm usually like, okay, I got to go in the other room because I'm hijacked, and don't exacerbate it. Like you said, don't start
Right.
texting about it and talk, look at what this person did, right? So just get
Get
curious about it.
curious.
Mhm.
And I would add to the curiosity piece, if you want to ask yourself a simple question, what do I need to do now for me? What does love ask me to do for
Yeah.
me?
Yeah. What can I
What
learn
do I
here?
need? What
Yeah.
do I need?
What can I discover here? Yeah.
Mhm.
And I would say, if you do want to do some of that work, like hypnotherapy is great, NLP, there's great somatic body work that you can do, collaging, that lots of things. And just know like it is those neural pathways is what's causing the trigger. These things are linked up, right? So things that can help unlink them. And what I've discovered from a lot of different teachers is they're not going to go away. It's not like that's never going to be there. Some would say, I think it's like an old highway that gets abandoned. It's like, oh, there's like a distant memory, like, oh yeah, there used to be like the road near my Highway 46. I don't know if you know it, but they like moved it, and it's like I can kind of still see a little bit of where like it used to be. I'm like, oh, I remember riding over there, but I don't drive over. I don't like get off the road and like try and go down that highway anymore. So like your brain can get some new neural pathways, and then it's just about you conditioning that, and so that's where, like me, like with the chocolate and food, like I do, like I'm on a 30-day no sugar. I'm like, you know what, hold up, that little neural pathway is firing way too, wait, on the daily, and I don't want that, right? And that's
Mhm.
if we have that sense of ability to regulate that, and then I can. That's good. That's good.
Yeah, and with the thing that I was mentioning, like I am a little bit on this mission because this is part of the curriculum. Obviously, why this thing occurred to me and
Yeah.
came up and created some awareness around it. I was like, huh, there is some old shit in this arena I need to heal. And then, in addition to that, I want to feel empowered around this subject matter, around this experience for other girls and women. And you bet your sweet ass I will be doing that. So I will be using that in a positive way
Yeah.
to do my work in the world.
Totally,
Mhm.
totally. And what I love about what you're saying is like healing, healing a trigger or working with a trigger isn't about never feeling it again. Like I said,
Right.
that old highway, maybe it's just like an old thing. It's not about no longer being run by it. Like
Mhm.
that's what like you're being empowered by it. You're like, I'm taking action in spite of it or as a result of it. It's like, oh yeah, this is who I want to be more. And you and I were talking about, because I shared with you when you shared your story about that man, about how it wasn't like an attack, but a man was inappropriate with me when I was a teenager and it like shut down and it had me like cover my body because I didn't want to like send out this signal of, I'm available. Come, be inappropriate with me, type of thing. And so, like, I'm not, you and I were like, I want to wear what I want to wear and I want to do what I want to do. And you can use your mouth to create a boundary or create, an expression of yourself and not be, I was being run by it by covering myself up all the time because I don't want to invite that inappropriateness or that kind of male energy, if you will. So it's like,
Yeah.
no, set ourselves free, right?
Yeah, that will not have power over me.
Mm-hmm.
Nope.
Mm-hmm. So good stuff. Good
Yeah.
stuff. So what's your one thing about today that you want people to remember or take away?
I mean, well, it comes from something that you said about how much time, what was it, 12 milliseconds or
Oh,
whatever it was,
milliseconds. Yeah.
right? So I think that's a really important point to drive home is just the rapid succession of how your physical body and then your mental body, emotional body will respond to these circumstances. So don't make yourself wrong, right? Don't again compound or put gasoline on this by fueling it and feeling shame, embarrassment, like all of the things that also might happen by the fact that you have this that keeps coming up. And it is a form of, in my perspective, a form of suffering, right? So you're a human. This is how humans, this is how we work. This is part of what we do in this show is just to explain to people like, hey, this is how your body and brain work. And, sometimes they're working in your favor and sometimes they're not. So
Mm,
please give yourself endless
mm.
compassion and love and just grace with this.
Yeah. Going back to Gabor Mate, he says compassionate inquiry. So I would say because I started judging myself about, I was like, oh, I got pissed off at that really nice agent, or maybe they weren't very nice, but that person, that's another human that I see as me, right? But in that moment, I got defensive, I got righteous, I got, angry, la la la, right? And it's like, and then the wise sage in me is like, oh, you shouldn't be triggered by that. It's like, yeah, just be compassionate, like you said, and be open to what's there to learn or to discover in this. And I think that's really sweet way of going about it. And not everything that you have to solve and like get to the bottom of too. So it's like, okay, I get triggered at airports from time to time. Like I'm not gonna like go into therapy for a year or something to
No, but I'm going to be honest and say, okay, so I need to set myself up for maximum capacity when I am traveling. So I will be well slept. I will be well fed. I will not be in a rush. Blah, blah, blah. Whatever your list of things is,
yeah,
I will
yeah,
prepare myself. Right. So
yeah.
this is just proactive healthcare, really, right?
Yeah. And I love the idea, like we talked about. Well, discovering more about this. I think there's layers of this that we've just touched the surface in terms of what is going on in your brain and in your body about this. So if you are not a student of emotional mastery and emotional intelligence and, you know, being able to, recognize this or even having the self-awareness, like you just keep doing it, you're like, oh God, I'm so annoyed with myself that I keep doing this. A is understanding more about it. The mechanics of it are very freeing. It's kind of like once you know how electricity works, you're like, oh, I get
Right.
it. Right?
It's
It's like,
totally liberating. And
yes.
it's also freaking hilarious.
Yeah.
Okay.
And that's the other thing. It's like it's school, man. School's in. All right. You're just in it. We're all in
School
it.
is in session, people.
Play with it. Be curious. Be like, okay, like you said, oh,
Yeah,
this is the curriculum today. Got it. Okay. That's it. That's it.
totally.
So good.
Showing up, keep you
All
showing up.
right. Well, let's wrap it up and remind our beautiful humans what's most important. What's most
Uh,
important?
how your messy, complicated,
Triggered.
imperfect life, highly triggered life looks. Oh, it's not that important, but how it feels is.
Yeah. And every day is your opportunity to find your awesome. Love you
Very good.
guys.
See you next week.